Well, Murderbot is another example of Apple TV Plus's quality over quantity approach, and it also seems especially geared to say something to us as geeks. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Murderbot on Apple TV Plus reads, "A security android struggles with emotions and free will while balancing dangerous missions and desire for isolation, evading detection of its self-hacking as it finds its place." All right, so the first two episodes dropped, and they're less than 30 minutes each. It's about a scientific team that's studying this uninhabited planet, and Murderbot is a security system who's older, been alive, quote-unquote, for a while, but recently hacked his systems to override the governing module that the company installed so that he is able to exercise his own free will. But he doesn't want anybody to know that he's able to do that yet because he knows he'll be scrapped. And so he's kind of waiting for the ideal situation to truly take advantage of his freedom, and until then is pretending to still be under control, obeying orders, all those kinds of things. His internal narration is constantly peppered throughout scenes, keeping us connected with Murderbot all the time, what he's thinking, what he's feeling. So it's a show that's very focused on him as a character, but also leaves room for other characters to kind of present their traits and to develop. It's mostly what I would describe as a sci-fi comedic drama with a pretty light and charming tone, but that still presents threatening moments and situations that are, at least in the moment, taken pretty seriously. The episodes, like I said, are under 30 minutes, and so despite the character focus, the story does feel tight and moving forward, and each episode so far kind of has its own main story that it's dealing with, certainly interconnected and all part of a larger story, but each so far feels like a pretty complete chapter. The audience connection with the main character, with Murderbot, is not based on an acceptance that AI can become sentient. I don't think that's philosophically really what it's about. And on top of that, he has some biological components, and so there's room for me, at least, to wonder if he could ultimately be classified as a radically altered cloned human, but that largely the human population does not think of as a person, but they are recognized as sentient or whatever. So the origins of sentience are not really explored, and therefore, if that's a hang-up for you, like it can be for me sometimes, depending on how they are treating AI and the subject of personhood, I don't think it needs to be a hang-up here. It actually became clear to me before the end of the first episode that Murderbot, this show, I don't think is about to prime humans to start thinking about the concept that we might create personhood artificially someday. It actually creates these strong parallels to us, specifically us as geeks, particularly those who are highly intelligent but severely lacking in social skills and in comfort around other people. I wouldn't be surprised if Murderbot was meant to parallel the experience of some people with autism, but I'll leave comments along those lines to those of you more familiar with autism than I am. Murderbot has a very active thought life, like many of us geeks. He's also extremely insecure, like many of us, despite the fact that he has to work in social settings that expose his insecurity or threaten to expose his insecurity. He's always just feeling like doesn't want to make eye contact, doesn't want to have to talk. And all while he's serving others and at the same time feeling very underappreciated, undervalued, even dehumanized. And these are things that many of us as geeks can relate to. He's also, at the very least, if not treated inhuman by others, talked about behind his back, at least seen as weird by others, by his quote-unquote coworkers, which I think a lot of geeks can really connect with. So I found it very easy to feel sympathy for this character and to root for him. Murderbot is also trying to recover some memories that were wiped before he was refurbished. Memories that, in fragments that he still has, suggest intense violence in his past. And in another way, I think this potentially parallels past trauma that, for at least a few geeks, contributes to their mental, social, and emotional difficulties. Despite his weaknesses, relationally speaking, Murderbot is extremely capable and powerful, and we get to see that on display in some really satisfying sci-fi action, although this isn't frequent in the first two episodes. It seems like this show is setting out to be a charming, character-focused, quirky sci-fi drama that doesn't get too heavy, with bits of comedy and bursts of sci-fi action, and I think it's succeeding at that blend pretty well. As far as the cast goes, Alexander Skarsgård plays Murderbot and is great with his nearly blank stare that always subtly includes hints of the insecurity that he's feeling. The other actors I thought are all solid and mostly either likable or at least intriguing. In the first 2 episodes, there are 3 characters that seem less defined and mostly present at this point for a bit of comedy and to create a polyamorous love triangle that, while I don't feel required to invest in, also just feels like it's taken up space a bit. I'm hoping those actors will get other material to work with soon to help me care about and identify with their characters. They seem like solid actors, but they don't have much to work with in the first 2 episodes to really give me opportunity to see what they're capable of. As far as stunts and visuals, well, like I've said already, Apple seems to really focus on quality over quantity. These are short episodes, but they've got really good visual effects going on. It's not flawless, but I mean, it feels premium and way more than I would expect from the type of script this is, this quirky, short sci-fi dramedy. So really happy with visually what I'm seeing in terms of the designs and the fidelity of the execution. All right, as far as themes, I've already touched on that a bit, but is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance in the themes of this thing that could trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? Well, I think there's lots of geek dynamics at play, lots of social situations and feelings in those situations that geeks will be able to relate to. This even includes a bit of rivalry between 2 quote-unquote geeks, one being Murderbot and the other being a human with computer processor implants. And so both of these characters are incredibly intelligent, very capable, and their rivalry, which is they both feel toward each other, seems to ultimately be about their similarities. And so I think in light of that kind of element in this story, a great question to ask ourselves is, do I feel threatened by someone in a social setting when they have some of the same unique strengths as me, when they have some of the same knowledge that I'm kind of known for, and maybe they're also a bit stronger in some of those areas than I am? Does that threaten my sense of self, my sense of purpose, my sense of value in a group? And these are times where it's vitally important for us as believers to go back to what the Lord says about our identity and who we are, and find our sense of grounding there rather than in what others think of us and how we kind of fit into social situations. And that's just one theme that stands out. Whether it's intended or not, this is a parallel that I think we can use to process some worthwhile things. I suspect there's going to be a lot more like that geeks are going to be able to relate to, that'll give geeks worthwhile things to think about in the episodes that go forward from here. No idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, okay, watch this one. It's a charming show that'll be of casual interest to you. It doesn't leave me hungry for more, but I do want to watch more eventually. So wait until all the episodes drop, then binge it with just 1 month of Apple TV Plus when there's something else on there that you also want to watch, and put it on while you exercise or do something else and wait and see if it warrants at some point your full undivided attention. It's not so great that you're going to want to carve out dedicated time for it and only it, but it's one you'll definitely want to give more time to beyond the first 2 episodes. And this one is rated MA for violence and language. Those are all of my thoughts for now on the first 2 episodes of Murderbot on Apple TV Plus. As always, love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I do want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/Spirit Blade Productions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.